and welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm your host, Morgan, and today we need to talk about Florida. And the reason we're talking about Florida today is because Florida has a mosquito problem, and one British company, Oxitec, is hopefully going to help solve this problem. On April 23rd, the EPA announced that it has officially approved a program that will release genetically modified non-biting mosquitoes into the Florida Keys. So naturally, we need to talk about that. But before we begin, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you want more of my science-y communication, environment, educational, outdoorsy content. And please leave me comments down below. I do enjoy reading and responding to them. And if you do feel so inclined, feel free to share the videos as well. I will be grateful, but without further ado, let's get into this. So what exactly is going on here? Well, Florida is a tropical place, and like other tropical places, there's an abundance of biting insects, specifically mosquitoes. And not only are these mosquitoes annoying little bugs, but the females feed on blood, and they can cause itchy rashes at best and terrible diseases at worst. Now, it's not the mosquitoes themselves that cause the diseases, they just carry the parasites that cause the diseases in the blood that they like to drink, and then they can pass it from person to person. So since at least 2012, Florida has been looking for a way to control the mosquito population. They've tried spraying, but spraying will kill both mosquitoes and other non-target species of insects because the spraying method is literally spraying poison. Mosquito fish have been kind of played around with, and mosquito fish are kind of common in ponds and things like that, but they can potentially cause problems in the ecosystem and become a big problem themselves. So not the best solution. In 2017 and 2018, they did try a program where they released male mosquitoes that were infected with a bacteria that rendered all offspring inviable. So that basically means that the offspring didn't really get through the life cycle, so they didn't go from egg to larva to adult. But ultimately, all of these methods have failed. So that brings in Oxitec, which is a British company that works to develop environmentally safe ways to control insect populations. And the mosquito solution that they've come up with is releasing male mosquitoes of the target species. So Aedes aegypti? I'm not going to try to pronounce that again today, but it's a specific species of mosquito, and it's only one of the species that's common in the area. But they want to release genetically modified males of the species. And basically what the genetic modification is for is to produce any female offspring as infertile. And this particular program has actually been done in Brazil before and has gotten good results, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. So on April 23rd is when the EPA officially approved the program, or at least that's when the approval was announced. But the point is the program has been approved, and do note here that prior to approval, the program did go through the required periods of review and public comment and all that fun stuff necessary for something like that. But the idea here is that the EPA considers this the most reasonable solution that will have the least detrimental effects on the environment, because spraying poisons is spraying poison. Using mosquito fish can potentially also harm the environment because they can become a problem. And the other method where they release the male mosquitoes infected with bacteria failed. So The program was actually set to begin the week of April 26th. So by the time you're seeing this video, it's already begun. And the whole thing is naturally a bit controversial, so that's why we're talking about it now. First things first, let's talk about this target mosquito species. So this little insect here. Now, this species makes up about 4% of the total mosquito population in Florida. However, it's responsible for nearly all of the transmission of the mosquito-borne illnesses in Florida. So that's why this species is the target species, despite only being a very small percent of the mosquito population. And like other species of mosquito, the males do not feed on blood. They primarily feed on nectar and things like that, so they're non-biting. They don't bite people. The males do not transmit the diseases from one person to another, only the females. And the females basically feed on blood for the nutrients, specifically the protein, for their eggs. And the reason why this is a big deal is because some of the viruses that are spread by mosquitoes are things like yellow fever, which has mild symptoms that can be a fever, aches and pains, nausea, vomiting, any loss of appetite. However, there is these severe cases that become toxic, and you'll get jaundice, high fever, abdominal pain, vomiting, bleeding from the eyes, nose, mouth, and or stomach. And half of the people with toxic cases will die within 7 to 10 days. So that's kind of a big deal. Dengue fever is one of the other big concern diseases here, and it produces flu-like symptoms, so kind of similar to the mild cases of yellow fever, but severe cases can be fatal. And dengue fever, there's no specific treatment. There is a vaccine, however, it's primarily only used on those living in the most vulnerable areas who have already been infected at least once. And there's a little bit more reason for that, and if you go to the World Health Organization site I have linked down below, it goes into detail about that, but for brevity, we're not gonna get any more specific. And it's primarily only been a problem in Asian and South American countries for most of the history that we've known of this particular disease. However, in recent times, it's rapidly becoming a problem in pretty much all tropical areas around the globe, Florida included. There was a severe outbreak in Key West back in 2012, which is when it kind of became important to get the mosquito problem under control. So that's when, at least in the Keys, they began looking into Oxitec's technology because this particular technology was already in the work. And it seems like the best way to prevent dengue fever is just through controlling mosquito populations. So important. And the other disease that has really stepped up the game here and made it very important to control mosquito populations is Zika virus. And usually the mild cases will have symptoms very similar to mild cases of dengue fever, which are flu-like. So while it doesn't seem that serious in adults, it has been linked to birth defects when pregnant women have contracted Zika. And it's also been linked to an increased risk of neurological problems as well. So kind of a problem. There is no treatment for Zika, there's no vaccine, and it's still being researched. It is spreading globally despite originally the whole idea that it was only an issue in like Asian countries. It's spread to South America and it's come up here to North America as well. And like dengue, the best preventative measure is to control mosquito population. So that is what Florida needs to do. And there are other diseases spread by mosquitoes, but these are the three big ones that have led to this particular program and this particular headline. So the plan. Basically, they're going to put out these boxes that you can see in the image here. They're lovely and blue and white and cheery color scheme. And in a few days, they will release the adult male mosquitoes that have been genetically modified. And again, the male mosquitoes are non-biting. They do not feed on blood, so you're not releasing more bloodsuckers. And the genetic modification that these mosquitoes have is that they can breed with the wild females. However, any female offspring produced are going to be sterile. So the whole idea here is just to reduce the breeding population by having offspring that are sterile. So let's talk about Brazil, because Brazil is actually where this program has been tested. And from 2011 to 2015 was the initial test of this program and of these mosquitoes. And what they found at the end of the testing was that they had a 90% reduction in the mosquito populations when they compared them to the control location. So the control location just had none of their mosquitoes released. It was just left as is. And then in 2018 and 2019, there were more trials done, and they yielded 89% to about 96% population suppression during the peak mosquito season, which is a big deal. But the big question here, despite these really awesome results of the testing and the reductions in the population of this species of mosquito, is this program safe? And according to the EPA and the information available through Oxitec, yeah, the program seems pretty safe. The mosquitoes are genetically modified, so they're not a new species. They're a species that already exists there in the environment. They're not the only mosquito species in Florida or the only organism at their trophic level, so there's very little danger of them upsetting the balance in the food chain. And reducing their population size seems to pose such a little risk of unbalancing the ecosystem that it is really important to protect human health, that the cons kind of outweigh, or excuse me, the pros outweigh the cons in this situation. And again, other methods of control such as pesticides and fish pose a greater threat to the environment than releasing genetically modified males of a species that already exists in the environment. So to kind of wrap up here, I think that the public fail to understand that male mosquitoes don't bite, so they're not going to impact their lives at all, really. It's just going to be a few more little bugs buzzing around until the population reduces naturally through breeding and producing infertile offspring. But I also think that the way that genetically modified organisms and GMOs are talked about in the media make people automatically think, oh, GMO, genetically modified, that equals bad. And that's something that we kind of need to work against, because genetic modification doesn't mean bad. It just means we've messed around with the genetics a little bit to produce a specific outcome. It's neither bad nor good. It's just how it's used. Like, science in general is not bad and it's not good. It's just kind of is. It's neutral and it can be used for bad or good. But the science itself is neutral. And in this case, this genetically modified organism is good. So based on the sources I've looked at and linked down below, this actually looks like a very promising solution to the mosquito problem, which is exciting because in areas that have other species of mosquito carrying other diseases, I know West Nile virus is a big deal out here on the West Coast. It is a big deal, and I would be interested to see if it can translate into other species as well in the future. And it does seem to pose less threat to the environment than other control methods like poison or fish. But I mean, you have to take every source that's published by a company specifically with a grain of salt. And I do encourage you to look into the sources and come up with your own conclusions. Please leave any comments down in the section below to keep this conversation going. I would be very interested in hearing what your thoughts are about this. And if you feel so inclined, feel free to share the video or like it, subscribe, all that lovely stuff. Have a wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, evening, what have you, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane B. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.